Hi everyone, Alex here again with some more image reviewing. This is a second part of a batch of images that I processed recently from my Maldives trip, which was in March and April 2025, and I prioritized processing pictures taken with the forthcoming flash guns from Retra, the Retra MAXI flash guns, because I wanted to show the pictures in an episode of the Underwater Photography Show about those flash guns. And if you want to know more about those flash guns, dig into the Underwater Photography Show archive. It's one of the more recent episodes if you're watching this when it's relatively new, and you can hear about those flash guns which are coming out in the summer. I had the chance to try them a bit early. So continuing with Maldives pictures, this is kind of the second half of the same batch really, so there's nothing here. They were just sorted on time. So yeah, just running through the trip. As always, the camera settings are on the right hand side, but I'll also try and get these pictures up on my website so you can see them too. I think we were in the middle of a dive at Mufushi when in the last episode. So if you've watched the last episode, I think I showed one shot of these snappers, or a couple of shots of these snappers, and now there's some more shots of these snappers. The first two pictures are taken with WACP1, and then actually the next batch of pictures, which are the Manta shots, are with the Nikonos 15mm, so the mechanical Nikonos 5 rectilinear lens. So let's get going. Let's have a look. This is another group of snappers. I did have a Manta in the background of this shot. Unfortunately, as the Manta got closer, the diver next to me was also kind of between me and the Manta. So when the Manta was a little bit bigger, I couldn't get it into the shot. If I'd have been on my own, obviously I'd been able to swim slightly around to the right here and have the Manta right over the school of fish. But unfortunately for me, I was pinned in by other photographers, so this was my only angle. I like this shot. It's not perfect. There could have been an amazing shot possible with the Manta right above these fish, but that's the nature of going on trips with other photographers. Sometimes it gets you the opportunity to do things you couldn't do, and sometimes those other photographers can stop you getting exactly what you want to out of a particular pit situation. And actually, moments after taking that shot, I realised that it was just too much mess of other divers and photographers around the place. So I decided to zoom in, fill the frame with school, and therefore not have to worry about all the bozos that were hanging around in my shot. And this is definitely one of my favourite shots from that Maldives trip. I have about 15 shots of this almost identical to this, just with slightly different compositions. I like this one because it's got a little bit of reef at the bottom, a little bit of blue at the top. It just puts a bit of context in the picture. And of course, if an end user, a magazine or something, wanted to crop it tightly, this is obviously a 50 megapixel file from the from my Sony, so they can, you can, maybe not zoom in quite that much. I can't see what magnification we're at now, but you can zoom in a long way into this picture if you wanted to as an end user. And show it the way you want to. Obviously, I really like the fact that we've got this rogue humpback snapper, paddletail snapper, mixed in with all the blue stripe snappers. Just creates a great focal point in this picture. It'll be a nice picture, a very pleasing picture with just blue stripe snappers. But having that extra fish in, just makes a great focal point. It wouldn't surprise me as if a lot of magazines use. A picture like this is brilliant for a double page spread where you've got this type of composition. I could see a lot of them cropping it slightly and not having that bit of reef and a bit less blue at the top. There's plenty of resolution to do that, but I don't feel I need to. I like it like this with just a little bit more context around it. It feels a bit more real. But I would also fully expect many users to do it like that. And in fact, I shot slightly tighter cropped, zoomed in pictures during the dive. And as I process a few more from this dive, it was a very productive dive, being in front of such a great school of fish, that I will. This one was at 48mm on the 28-60. So there are plenty where I zoomed in a little bit further and some where I zoomed further out, because I presume that previous one was at 28mm. Yeah, you can see. These pictures, there's no lens data on these because they're with the Nikonos 15mm lens, a mechanical lens. I do like shooting it. I'm not convinced that the image quality is that great, especially when you come off the WACP. There's WACP. I'll zoom it in. It's nice and sharp. Really great colours from WACP. And there's the Nikonos. And yeah, people go on about the Nikonos 15mm being the Rolls Royce, the perfect underwater lens. I don't think the colours are as good as the WACP. It's really sharp. It's got good image quality. We'll go across the school of snappers. You can see that they're nice and sharp out to the edges. I don't think they're perfect at the edges. I think look at this. They're beginning to not look quite as good. So, I mean, it is an exceptionally good lens, but I do, and you see it's sharp right into the corners. But I'm not convinced that it's so other level. In fact, I think the WACP's got slightly better image quality than the Nikonos 15mm. But I really like the 15mm. I like the different look it takes. I like to use it on every trip because I think I like the discipline of shooting a manual focus lens. And I like the angle of view being that little bit tighter. You can see here I've got another rogue manta in the background of my schooling fish shot. I've also got some mimic goatfish at the top that pretend to be blue stripe snappers. But apart from that, it's just a fairly nice ball of fish, which is always, for me, very Maldivian. Just a little bit up from that previous picture, up the dive site, here is a manta coming through this school of snappers. And actually, there's a video clip, so I had the GoPro running, right on top of the lens when shooting this. The GoPro is slightly wider than the Nikonos lens, but they're pretty similar angle of view as well, actually. I had the GoPro running for this, so if you watched that Maldives catch-up episode Matt and I had about rating the Maldives as a destination for photographers, you can actually see a video of this sequence and my flash guns going. This is actually slightly further away, some of the shots where they're closer, but I think when it's further away, the manta and the fish have a better interaction visually in the shot. As manta came closer, the manta kind of gets big and the fish kind of gets small, and it's relatively so. And I don't think there's as much feeling here. The fish kind of feel like they're running away from the manta, whereas in the later shots the manta's kind of above and past them. So although the manta's bigger, the fish aren't as good. Right, I don't know why this has gotten a mess, but there we go. Why are they going like this? Is it on essentials? Who knows? Where's the zoom? I'll just try. There we go. They've rearranged themselves magically. So, but this is Nikonos as well. Shot. I generally run it at about f11, f13. So it's f11, f13, a 60th, ISO 320, fairly standard settings now up to 125th, but the same ISO. And here, just using the fact that those Retra MAXIs really throw light, so I was able to get lots of light on this manta. And just playing with the composition to get that second one nicely in the frame. There was two of them coming through, and then that little group of little silvery fish whizzed across. I don't know what they are actually. Let's have a look. Not sure. Maybe they're the sardine fusiliers. I don't know. But anyway, the little group of silver fish swim across the frame, and that seemed a great moment to press the shutter. It's slightly unusual, this shot, because the manta is either half unfurling or half curling up his cephalic fin, the front manta, which makes him a little bit messy in my opinion. But apart from that, I really like the shot. I like the manta, I like the two remoras, I like the second manta and the silvery fish, and a little bit of reef just to give it some context. But yeah, these are obviously uncropped because that lens is quite tight. And this is again with the Nikonos, with a manta actually that swam around behind me as it was coming into the cleaning station. This manta had a very unusual dark spot on its fin up here. So it's got this dark pigment spot on its fin. I don't know whether it got bitten when it was young. It's a really weird spot on its fin up there, which looks a bit weird in the photo, but it's part of the manta. It's not a random fish swimming in front of it or a processing error. It's just part of the manta. And also I like the fact that you've got the cleaner wrasse coming in here and the remoras like turn around to look at them, which I think is quite fun. But otherwise it's very much a sideways on manta shot. But I do like the perspective. And then this is one of the mantas going right over my head with the Nikonos. I don't especially like this angle on mantas when they're right above you with a fisheye. They tend to get too distorted. But actually the tighter lens, although I can't get the whole manta in, I think actually worked rather well in this situation. So I quite like this shot, whereas I don't normally like this same angle with the fisheye. With the fisheye, I'd be able to get the whole manta in, but actually it tends to distort the shape and it doesn't look very nice. So actually this tighter shot, cropped, looks good. And there's something about a tighter lens on a big subject that you can't get the whole subject in, but it really helps communicate how big the subject is. Okay, back to reef diving now. This was with the FCP, I think. Let me check. Yeah, FCP now. Just shooting a balled up anemone. on this little reef, just one of those kind of more relaxing, off the beaten path reefs. Loads of anemones on this reef. Lots of tubastria, the green coral as well. And so this shot is combining those two elements with a balled up anemone. Maldives is great for balled up anemones. There's lots of anemones in the Maldives, and I think the mixed, it's sunny a lot of the time there, but late afternoon, early morning dives, the anemones all ball up. So it's had so many opportunities with balled up anemones on this trip, and I thought I'd just mention that because we don't normally talk about that in the Maldives. You always talk about sharks. Loads of grey reef sharks in the Maldives. There's lots of places where you can hook in and watch them swim sideways onto you like this. And the WACP is a very good lens for that because it allows you to zoom in or out, and you can have groups of 3 or 4, or you can have individuals. But photographically, these shots are fine. It's part of Maldives diving. I'm happy to process a few of them out. But ultimately, I don't find many of these shots particularly inspiring. It's kind of just a shark against a wallpaper of fish. It's not a particularly inspiring backdrop or anything. And the sideways on position of the shark is also just a little bit flat for me visually. They're not really coming onto the camera. They're just kind of cruising sideways on. But the good thing about having WACP is you can go in and out. And this was a nice fluorescent bulb tip anemone. And it had this big Clarkson anemone fish pair living in there. And so I zoomed in with the WACP, completely filled the frame as much as I could with these tentacles, and then shot the anemone. It was quite an old, scraggy anemone fish. If you look, he's got all these kind of weird, blotchy markings on his face. Nonetheless, I like the colour of the anemone, and I like this type of shot of an anemone fish. I like lots of anemone in a relatively small fish, and I definitely like using the WACP at the 60mm end as a kind of almost like a bigger, wider macro lens for these kind of little scenes like this. Very nice. WACP also great for turtles. If you see that Retra MAXI review, I actually scrolled through about 20 of these shots from this turtle that I was able to shoot, making use of the fact that the strobe recycles very fast, and I just shot a whole bunch of these, and I've just got every pose you can imagine from about 1 minute with one turtle, and it just yielded, there's probably 30 pictures I could process that would be, very similar to this. Just really nice poses, nice turtle, nice background. I processed a couple out. I like this one with his arm at the top, his flipper at the top of the frame. He's almost like he's peering down below a shelf or below his flipper. He's kind of peering into the picture. So I like that angle. I like shots where the turtles look nice and relaxed. I like symmetrical flippers in my turtle shots as much as possible. And the turtles are just looking chilled, like there's a relaxation in their body, which I think comes through in the picture. The top of these tealers, or this tealer in particular, fish head, is very, very good for turtles. They love the zoanthids? No, corallimorphs. The corallimorphs, which are these little brown things down here that cover the reef surface. It's a great turtle food, so there's always turtles on this dive. Most of the photographers are more interested in sharks and other things, so if you just shallow up and cruise around on top of the reef for a couple of minutes, you'll find yourself a turtle, and then you can enjoy shooting it. So it's really nice. Often on a dive, on workshop dives for me, if I bump into a turtle, I don't really get to have it to myself, so it's always nice to have an opportunity to spend just a couple of minutes with a turtle. I wonder if the times are on these. Let's see how long I was with them. Yeah, so this picture here, which is one of the early ones in the sequence, was taken just a minute and a half before the other. But during that time, I just banged out a whole load of shots, which was great. Now on to the nighttime Manta madness. This is in Fesdu Lagoon. It's a well-known site where young mantas, youngish, kind of adolescent, middle, they're not babies. Mantas come at night, attracted to the lights of dive boats, to make use of the fact that lights can aggregate plankton, which makes it good feeding conditions for mantas. And the mantas have learnt this, and they come and they feed in the plankton aggregated on the lights of the liverboards. And also, if divers put torches down on the seabed, it also aggregates plankton and again creates great feeding conditions for the mantas. And you go down there and the mantas come swooping past your dive torch, which you've put in the sand in front of you, and you get the opportunity to shoot mantas at night. This is a long exposure. Just bring the settings up on that one. 1/4 of a second shot. Shot on relatively high ISO, most of these. This is another one, just a down the throat shot of the manta, and a couple more coming through. I used the Nikonos 13mm for this dive, but afterwards I really regretted not taking the FCP. And next time I do this dive, I'll take the FCP, because I think while it's nice to be able to do the big wide fisheye shots, I think some of these shots of the mantas, the fins of the manta, the wings of the manta, are a bit small in the frame. And I think if I'd had the FCP and I could have just backed off slightly, zoomed in more, I would have got a less head, more body shot of the manta, which would have been less distorted and probably more attractive. So next time I do this dive, definitely FCP. You can, the fisheye is great. You can do these wider shots like this, or really wide shots like this, and capture all the action. But I would like the ability to zoom in a bit as well. And given that you tend to do this dive once on a trip, the flexibility to shoot lots of different shots rather than lots of very samey shots that the FCP would give me would really appeal to me. So I really enjoy this dive, but next time I do it, it's definitely going to be FCP. My take-home message from that. But I like the dive. Lots of great shots. I took over 1,000 pictures on this night dive. Relatively high ISO a lot of the time. You can see some of these are 1,000 and 1,250. This one is 2,000. I'm shooting with quite an open aperture as well, f11 most of the time. And because of that, I'm not needing a lot of strobe power. So I was able to shoot relatively rapid fire, and obviously those Retra MAXIs recycled instantly, so I could just blast away when I wanted to without putting much light out, and was able to get loads of pictures. Right, now up to Rashdu Atoll. So we left South Area Atoll behind. Now up to Rashdu Atoll. No, North Area Atoll is Fesdu. Anyway, up to Fesdu Atoll, up north of there. And this is the bridge or the wall at Fesdu that many people would recognise if they've dived there. You normally go on the wall for grey reef sharks, but actually we had the wrong tide for that when we were there. So well out on the wall, cruising along, I had this nice green turtle. We had really nice eagle rays there and sweet lips. I haven't processed those yet. This is at Maya Tila. I'm going to give you a bit of a secret of mine that I learnt on this trip. Most of them, there's lots of bored up anemones in the Maldives, but most of them are either purple or orange skirted. You saw an orange skirted one in the previous video with the snappers, and there's the normal purpley pink skirted one. At Maya Tila, there are anemones that are this amazing pinky, rich pinky fuchsia type colour. Amazing colour with grey tentacles rather than pink with green, and they're super photogenic, and it's the only place I know that you get them in the Maldives. I'm sure there are other places, but I know that they're there, and they're great for photos. So I'm always going to try and time my dives at Maya Tila to be late afternoon, when those anemones should be balled up, and they'll be a major focus of my dive, because that is just an awesome colour for an anemone. And yeah, I really want to make use of that in the future. A pajama surgeonfish, one of my favourite surgeonfish. These are a shallow water specialist. They're kind of, if you dive the Red Sea a lot, they're like a Sohal surgeonfish on the Red Sea. Over most of the Indo-Pacific, the Sohal surgeonfish, is replaced or becomes these, which are the pajama surgeonfish. Very beautiful fish. I love the blues and yellows of them. You do sometimes get them a little bit deeper where you've got good conditions. I always think of the wreck in Bali, the Liberty wreck. It's always good for these in slightly deeper water. But I think they're such a handsome fish and very under photographed because they're a shallow water specialist. And here's one at a cleaning station where it was really flushing its colours at me. And now down into Lamu Atoll for these final few. These aren't taken with the Retra MAXIs. These are back on my Retra Pro MAXIs. I like that softer light a little bit more. So once I'd sort of done, so on the and my wife was using the MAXIs on this stage of the trip because she'd come out to join me by then. So this is a large green turtle with a couple of shark suckers on its back. And yeah, what's this mark there? Oh, it's a random fish. I didn't notice that before. That's a funny little fish, isn't he? Let's go and look what he is. Oh, he's a damselfish, isn't it? It's a 3-spot damselfish, or something like that, racing about, causing trouble. Anyway, I really like this turtle. She was actually a bit skittish, and we saw her, and I let everyone else in the group go first because I had the wide angle lens. There's only 4 of us in the dive group, but I let everyone have a good look at her because I just had that feeling from her she was going to fly. And so I got all my settings right, my lighting right and everything, and I sort of came as close as I could, held my camera out at arm's length and took this shot. And about 3 or 4 seconds afterwards she took off, and that was my one shot. And obviously I'd done test shots shooting the exact angle a little bit further away, so I knew once I got in position I'd get my shot. But it was just a really pretty situation. One of my favourite subjects in the Maldives are powder blue surgeonfish. They're so characteristic for me of the Indian Ocean, and when you get them aggregating, which is rare to see these schools like this, they make these schools for feeding, so that they can raid the territories of the dominant herbivore or the dominant sort of territory holding herbivores. And they, you know, if one comes along on its own, it will get chased off by the resident surgeonfish or resident aggressive little damselfish. But in a group, the residents can't chase them off. So they form these groups and then, you know, all turn up together and try and eat the food in sort of this melee. And that's why I used the long exposure for this picture to communicate that. But I also just love seeing this fish aggregated like this because it's such a beautiful fish, and it's also so characteristic of the Indian Ocean. And that's shot with WACP. It's on the same dive as this, so these are both WACP. Next up, this is macro shot with the Tamron 90. Just of a day octopus on the reef. There were lots of these on the house reef at Lamu, and my wife and I shot quite a few of them. The shots are quite samey. They're just nice posed octopus. You know, they're all kind of quite nice. I like this one, although it's a little bit messy. I like the fact that the octopus is trying to blend in with the halimeda, the algae that it's sitting on. And I like the fact that you see the algae's got these kind of, you know, sort of fan-like sections to it. And I like the fact that the octopus has kind of created that same texture on its body. And that's why I processed this picture. And I've got, you know, the next picture, it's doing a completely different thing before it moved. But I like that it's trying to blend in with halimeda in that picture. And I certainly see that very clearly when I look at this picture, which I really like. It's really cool. It shows how they change their shape to match in with their environment. Just a very common freckled or Forster's hawkfish sitting on this table coral, a Acropora table coral. Very, very common little reef scene. You know, you can't do a dive really in the Indo-Pacific without seeing Forster's hawkfish sitting on corals. But just I like the fact that it was just really looking at me. I got nice and close to it. And yeah, I just like the fact that the eyes nice and sharp. It's got quite cool teeth as well in the picture, and he's just ready for action. This was a pretty little scene shot with the MFO on the 90mm Tamron. And it's a cool cheetah, the cushion star, which has always got great patterns to them. And on it is this little black and white striped pygmy goby. I think they're endemic to the Maldives, but I'm not sure. I'll zoom in on him. And I just, you know, if you watch this a lot, you'll know that I really like pattern shots, but where there's something to break the pattern. Like those pictures of the snappers before. And this is a macro version of that. A macro shot of the schooling powder blue surgeonfish. I've got lots of shots to go through from these. I literally have just skimmed a couple of pictures out to process out. I really need to go properly through them. This is not perfect for me, and I think that I felt at this occasion I missed a really good opportunity because at one point I had the school swimming towards me and I had the macro lens on. And I think I could have got an even better shot than this, with just more neatness, really. Here, they're just starting to get messy. And yeah, I think probably if I'd shot it slightly earlier, I would have got a great shot of these guys. So this one's okay, but I think a really neat head-on shot of these would have just been really unique. Although visually, I actually think these fish look better from the side. So maybe, you know, you can see this guy's head-on. and he's out of focus obviously because he's behind the plane of focus, but he looks rubbish. So actually maybe there are fish that need to be sideways on, but it just looked so cool when they were swimming through the water towards me head on. Then a couple of shots that I was just doing of the scientists at work from the Maldives Underwater Initiative. The girls here were going off to do seagrass surveys. You can see they've got their float and notes and quadrat and various things they were going off. Actually, my wife was joining them. She did her PhD on seagrass, so she was very keen to go and join that. And I thought I'd harangue them to take a few pictures before they went in. So that's them just planning to go in. I need to process some more of those. And then this is the coral propagation facility at Six Senses in Lamu. And they have this coral propagation for propagating fragments, but also for propagating tiles where they've done larval collection. So when corals spawn, they put tiles down, collect the larvae that don't have anywhere better to settle, grow them on in the incubators, which they can also keep at constant temperature so they're not exposed to bleaching or anything like that. The corals grow very fast in these incubators, and then they can put them out on the reef when they're at a nice size where they should hopefully grow on really well. They've got through that risky period of life. And you can see that they're growing multiple species in here, which is really great. They're not just propagating a cropora, which a lot of coral propagation does, and you're propagating a very small selection of corals, which also may be very susceptible to exactly the same problem. So in the Caribbean I've seen lots of cropora propagation, and then you have one bleaching event and the whole lot dies. Or you're just putting one species down onto a reef, so it ends up covered in coral, but you lose the biodiversity. And I love the fact that they were propagating so many different species in this system. And we just did a few shots with that. This is just with one of the scientists, kind of posing really, but just examining one of the corals. And then, although I shot these with my Nikonos 13mm, and it can't focus in air properly, I still did a split level with it. It was the only lens small enough to fit in the propagator, so I couldn't use a bigger lens anyway. But I think the above water bit is sharp enough. It's not perfectly sharp. If I zoom in, you'll see that it's slightly out of focus, but I think it's sharp enough on his face in order to get the story told. I personally like the completely underwater ones with the reflections, but the split level is perhaps a better magazine type shot or a better storytelling shot, because I think this is very abstract. I think it's quite intriguing, but you might struggle to figure out what the hell's going on. Whereas a shot like this, I think, makes a lot more sense. So that's why I did it both ways. Final few shots. The last one from the Maldives is this picture here. Picasso triggerfish. Again, a bit like the pajama tang. It's one of pajama surgeonfish. One of my favourite fish that you never see photos of. Picasso triggerfish, this type, they tend to live very shallow. They really favour the back reef area. If you grew up snorkeling like I did before diving, you'd have been really familiar with these from snorkeling and then realised that you never saw them diving, and that's because they're real shallow water specialists. And so I wanted to shoot one of these, but I wanted to get it on a nice background, not just the white sand, because they tend to wash out their colours when they're on the white sand. So I went diving in shallow water seagrass. I actually got my dive kit brought to our overwater bungalow at Six Senses Lamu and went diving from the steps of our bungalow in rainy weather as well to get a nice dark environment to get these rich colours out of the Picasso triggerfish. And I'm really happy I did, because I've always liked this fish, and I'm really happy to have got a really nice portrait of one with great colours. And yeah, it's a fish that you just don't, everyone kind of knows because it's got such a great name and it's very distinctive looking, and you see it in the fish books and you've probably seen it snorkeling, but you never see it diving. So it's nice to get a picture of that. And then just a few other shots that were hanging around in my folders. This is a hydromedusa from Philippines Blackwater trip that just I processed after the last image review session, and a couple of random red sea shots. The skin of a star pufferfish, and the final one is a stonefish resting on the seabed. Both those last two are at Jackson Reef in the Strait of Tiran, and this is shot with the 13mm fisheye, and this is shot with the Sony 90mm. And I suspect that one is too. Yeah, this would be with a 90mm with the MFO. I don't think this one, although it could have been shot with the MFO, I don't think it was, because I don't remember if I took the MFO on that trip or not. Right, I hope that was interesting. A bit longer, that one, but hopefully some useful stats about the pictures.